So, I don't know about you and I don't know about anyone else, but I really love statistics when it comes to books. Statistics in general life, not a fan. But when it comes to what I've been reading, very interested. Since it's now the new year, it's 2021, it is the 9th of January when I'm filming this, I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through my Goodreads and my storygraph account and kind of look into the statistics of everything that I read in 2020. I don't know if anyone else will find this interesting. Personally, I think stuff like this is really cool. So I thought this would be a fun little video and might be a bit of a change compared to videos where people just go through everything they read in the year before. I read 58 books and I can't be bothered talking about every single book, because if I tried to do that I would be here for about 2 hours, maybe more, probably more, because if you've watched any of my other videos you know I like to ramble. And speaking of the fact I like to ramble, let's cut to the chase so I don't make this intro like 5 minutes long. So I've got my laptop here in front of me and I'm going to start off with having a bit of a chat about my Goodreads stats and everything. So I've been using Goodreads for many years. I'm not sure how many. I've been using Goodreads for quite a long time though, so I'm very used to it. And I'm sure if you're watching this you probably also have a Goodreads, or at least know of Goodreads. So I am going to scroll on down here and have a nosy at my year in books for 2020. I'm going to add little screenshots of everything here. Hopefully I've moved to the side enough for things to have enough space to appear. But yeah, let's start. My year in books for 2020. I read, ooh, that's a big number. I don't know how to say that. I probably should have looked this up before. Okay, so that's how many pages I read. I don't actually know how to say that number. What is it, I'm gonna Google how I'm meant to say that. After a quick Google, I've discovered I read 17,191 pages, which it's pretty cool. I've definitely read more in years prior. I think I've gone up to 20,000 something. Maybe that was last year, it might have been the year before though. But that's how many pages I read in 2020, and that was across 59 books. So I feel alright with that. I read a lot of short books this year, which I feel like is kind of unlike me. Normally I like to read kind of chunkier books, about 300 to more pages, 300 being the minimum. But this year I know that I read a lot of shorter ones. So let's get into that. The shortest book I read this year was 25 pages long, and it was one of the copies of the Uncanny X-Men. So it was the Uncanny X-Men 171 edition, the issue 171. So this year I kind of got into reading comics, which I've never really done before, so that was super exciting and really fun. And I kind of had to ask on my Instagram, I was like, yo, I'm reading a lot of comics, should I start putting it into my Goodreads? I got mixed responses. A lot of people said yes, but some were like no, because they're really short. So what I ended up doing was I put down, I think, 3 of the comics I read, but then I read 10 more. Because I just kind of had a day where I sat down and I binge read a bunch of the Uncanny X-Men. I like the X-Men quite a lot. This is my little boy Gambit. Isn't he cute? Isn't he cute? Little bobblehead. Yes, I know, sacrilege. I take my Funko Pops out of the boxes because I like that they have bobbleheads and I like to poke them. I'm gonna set Gambit beside me and he can be my little buddy throughout this. The longest book I read this year was Winter by Marissa Meyer, and it was 827 pages. I feel like that's a good length. I feel like that's a good length for the longest book. I kind of feel like I thought I read something longer, but evidently I didn't. And it never, maybe this is just me, but when I read Winter, it did not feel like it was that long. I genuinely have no idea how Winter ended up being over 800 pages. It went by like that to me. It was so fast, so easy to read. Good book. I really enjoyed the Lunar Chronicles. I read them all last year. Great time for me. very fun. So my average book length in 2020 was 291 pages, which is short. Like, to me, that's short, because like I was saying, I'm used to like the 300 like minimum mark. Maybe it's just because in my past years of reading I have read a lot of longer books. This year I had to read a lot for university, and a bunch of those books are substantially shorter just because I need to read like a book per week, so they kind of need to be slightly on the shorter side. So I guess I'm not surprised by that number, but I kind of want to bump it up for this year, for 2021. I kind of want to see that like going past the 300 threshold. I feel like that'd be really nice. So the most popular book that I read in 2020 was Lord of the Flies, which was read by many people, and I can't say the number. I'm not even going to try to Google this one. Big number, small brain, tiny pea brain. Numbers aren't my forte. Can you tell? That English, that's my forte. And then the least popular thing that I read this year was a very specific edition of A Midsummer Night's Dream, which 6 people also shelved, apparently. Shout out to those 6 people. For A Midsummer Night's Dream, that particular edition was just the one that I could get on my Kindle, and I got it because guess what I was doing? University work. So I kind of got the cheapest one I could find that was as true to the original play as could be. As for Lord of the Flies, I actually listened to that on audiobook. I wish when it came to Goodreads, and later on you'll see the same with the storygraph, that I could put down what edition I'm reading. Like, oh, how many paperbacks I've read, how many hardbacks I've read, how many ebooks versus how many audiobooks. I have read a lot of, I've listened to a lot of audiobooks in the past year, because from starting my own business and just kind of dooting about in my daily life, sometimes I find it difficult to get the chance to sit down and actually read, so I spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks while I do other things, because I still want to experience these novels, but I still have other things to do. And I find it's a really good way to kind of be productive while also doing something I really enjoy. But that's a whole thing in and of itself. So, as said by Goodreads, my average rating for 2020 was 3.6 stars, which I'm pretty okay with. I had a lot of really good books this year, and a couple of really not good. I would say that's a good, like, kind of in-between rating point. It shows that I do lean more so on the more positive ratings. I'm more of like a 4-star person than like a 2-star person. But this year I did have a couple of books which were major misses for me. On my channel there is one singular monthly reading wrap up, and it features the worst book I've ever read, in my humble opinion. It's not a bad book. I just really didn't like it. So me rating that 1 star, because I couldn't rate it 0, has probably brought down my rating quite a bit. Also, I do rate books that I read for university. Even though they're like literary books and I'm reading it to analyse it, I do like to rate them just to know for myself. I had, honestly, I would say it was pretty split. About half of the books I loved, half of them I was like, eh, and didn't really like. But yeah, I've rambled about my 3.6 rating for far too long. The highest rated book on Goodreads that I also read this year was Heartstopper by Alice Osman. It was edition number 3. So good. So good. I love the Heartstopper series. I'm so excited for volume 4. Like, buzzing. So excited. My first review of the year was also for Heartstopper. This is the same review that I posted on my Instagram, so I guess I'll show you a screenshot of that. Do you care? Probably not. Let's go past that now. Okay, and then it just goes on to all of the books I read. And as I was saying, there's 58 of them, so I'm not really going to bore you with all the ones I read. Unless you want to hear it. You know what? I'll probably just put a screenshot of those books. Yes, I read those. Moving swiftly on. So in 2020, I decided to make an account with the storygraph. Now, I found out about the storygraph, I think, through Hannah Witten? Maybe? maybe it wasn't through Hannah Witten. She tends to make videos like this at the end of each year where she discusses like statistics and everything. It might not have actually been through her, but I know for a fact that I saw the storygraph also on Instagram as well as maybe on YouTube. And I found it really interesting. I was immediately drawn to the storygraph because I saw that they used statistics. And I was like, hello? I want to know my book stats. So I ended up making a storygraph account and I still have my Goodreads, so for 2020 I kind of used them both at the same time. I would update them together, everything like that, just to kind of see which I preferred. Right now I'm still on the fence. I feel like I still kind of love Goodreads just because I'm so used to it, but the storygraph is really fun. It brings you a way more refreshing and interesting look on what you're reading and how you're reading and stuff like that. So if you don't have an account with the storygraph, I would highly recommend it. They're so cool. So cool. But anyways, let's talk about my stats from the storygraph because these are the ones that I have been super excited to look at. I've been really excited to read through these because they're just really cool. Viewing stats for 2020, and I want to look at the whole year. So my 2020 reading goal was 50 books. I actually didn't mention that at the start, probably shouldn't. My goal for the whole year was 50 books and I ended up, as you know, reading 58. Felt very happy, very proud of myself that I managed to get past that reading goal. For 2021, I think I've also put down 50 books. 50 books is my go-to every year. If I end up reading a little more than that, buzzing, that's so good. If I end up reading a little less, then I'm kind of like, not too happy about it. But I feel like it's a really good number for me because I know that I can reach it. And I know if I don't, it's not that big of a deal. But if I get past it, awesome, great. This is the cool bit. So, we have a pie chart. This is a pie chart, right? Yes, this is a pie chart. Big section here, which is the black section, is for dark reads. So books which have like a dark vibe and feeling to them. And I read 19 books which have like a dark theme. Am I surprised? No. After that is reflective, which had 18. Then we have emotional reads, which had 18 as well. Mysterious reads, which had 15. Challenging reads, which had 14. Lighthearted, which had 9. Adventurous, which also had 9. Hopeful, we had 7 hopeful books. We had 4 books which were put into the tense category. We had 4 that were in sad as well. Kind of surprised that one isn't higher. I've always thought I was like a sad book person. And we had 4 that were funny and 3 that were informative. After the moods pie chart, we have pace. So I feel like my pacing was actually really evenly split. So I had 18 in slow, 20 in medium, and 20 in fast, which I feel like is a really nice, even split. I'm kind of surprised about that. I always think I read slow books, but then again this year, as I said, I did read comics, which are substantially more fast-paced. So I guess I'm not too surprised. Page number. Okay, this is one that I find really interesting. So apparently 37 of the books I read this year were 300 or less pages long. What? I have no recollection of that having happened, but to be fair, I did end up reading a lot of plays for uni, so I suppose that makes sense. The next value is 18, which was between 300 and 499 pages, which I feel like is a good number. 18, it's kind of on the shorter side than I would want. For 2021, I definitely want to read more longer paced books. And then for 500 plus, I read 4 books, which were 500 plus pages. I'm actually quite interested to find out what those are. On the storygraph, a really cool thing you can do is when you have these little pie charts, and obviously they tell you like the value if you hover over it. Okay, how many books is the value? You get it, you're smart. If you click on it, it will actually send you to a page and I'll tell you what the longer ones were. So the books that I read, which were 500 pages plus, were Winter by Marissa Meyer, which we've already talked about, Let the Right One In by John he's actually one of my favourite authors and I can't say his name. I can't say his It's Swedish. I can't say it. After that, we have Stephen King Goes to the Movies, by Stephen King. It was a collection of short stories which were made into films. Really liked that actually. My thoughts on that were very up and down. Some short stories I loved, some I was like, eh. And then after that I read The Shining, also by Stephen King, which was good. So if we scroll down, then it separates your reading into fiction and non-fiction. So fiction books, I read 48, which is a solid number, not surprised. I do tend to read a lot more fiction than I read non-fiction. Kind of want to work on that, kind of want to read a bit more non-fiction. And I read 9 non-fiction books, which I feel like is okay, but I definitely want to get to that 10 threshold and maybe a bit over. So I'm definitely going to consciously try to gear myself towards some non-fiction books this year, just to kind of broaden my horizons and everything like that. This is a big old bar graph, but it tells you what genres you read. So the genres that I have in order of most prevalent to least prevalent, we have young adult, horror, fantasy, classics, contemporary, LGBT+, romance, comics, thriller, science fiction, poetry, feminism. Didn't realise I read any books on feminism. Love that. Plays, memoir, manga, graphic novel, biography, children's books, short stories, crime, true crime, mystery, music, history, and historical. So that's quite cool. In my top category, I read 23 young adult books. And the genre that comes immediately after that is horror, and I only read 12 horror books. So there is a massive jump there. I definitely want to even out my reading more. I feel like I'm really geared towards young adult, but I want to kind of move past that and read a lot more horror. I've discovered I love horror. Like, I love it. It's so good. So I really want to get into reading more horror, and I've discovered an issue with me is I get a lot of my reading recommendations off of Instagram. And I've discovered with bookstagram, it's very geared towards young adult. So I get a lot of young adult recommendations, which I love, which all end up being really good. But I can never really find recommendations for horror or anything else, like thrilling and along those lines, or even non-fiction. So if you have any recommendations on those, please drop them below. Please tell me, because I simply need to read more broadly when it comes to genres, because I'm tired of being stuck in the non-fiction boat. I say, despite the fact I'm pretty sure I want to make 2021 the year of rereads for me, which will be a lot of young adult, but we'll ignore that. When it comes to books that I've read the least of, it is tied between true crime, mystery, music, history, and historical, and I read one of each of those categories. I found that really interesting, actually. I didn't really expect that. A lot of these genres I feel like are mixed together. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Considering the fact I only read 59 books. I think I said 58 earlier, but it was 59. So close to 60. I wish I hit 60, but I didn't. But I went past my reading goal. It's all that matters. All that matters. Okay, so this is probably the coolest of the charts. So this one is, what are they called? Line graphs? This is not a line graph. I don't know what kind of graph this is. It's a cool graph. They got lots of graphs. See, they're very different. They're very fun. But this one tells you the number of books and pages you read by month, which is so cool and really shows how chaotic my reading is. Like, do you see the ebb and the flow? The ebb and the flow. It's a lot. So the best month for reading for me was March. I was going to say I'm surprised by. No, I'm not. That was lockdown. I was a good child, and I decided to take that in my stride and read a lot. I read 11 books in the month of March, and I read 3,416 pages in that month, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm very proud of that. A close second would have been September, when I read 11 books. But with my 11 books, I read 2,130 pages. So there's definitely like a difference there. In March, you can see I prioritized a lot longer of books, like on average, whereas in September, I seem to prioritize the number of books over the length. So that's really interesting to kind of look into. I wonder what I was reading those months. You can actually sort your storygraph by month as well. So I might have a little look at that after, see what I read in those months. But yeah, My worst month for reading was August. I read nothing. Nothing. Well, more so I finished nothing. I probably read like a few pages of some things, but I didn't finish any books in that month, which is kind of mental to look at. I really thought that that would have been more the November time that I didn't really read anything, but I suppose I had like a lot going on in my life in November, but I suppose I ended up actually reading a fair-ish bit. November was a really, really big and like busy month for me when it came to my business and candle making, because it was right before Christmas, so I listened to a lot of audiobooks during that time. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I read 6 books, but I'm still kind of surprised nonetheless. As you can see, my reading kind of plateaued when it came to December as well, because I know that I'm a big mood reader, so it doesn't really surprise me that the months are this sporadic and up and down. And then the last thing on the storygraph is your star ratings. And just like Goodreads, it was 3.6. For a 0-star rating, I had 1 book, which I'm going to tell you right now was Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, and I know it because I hated it. For 1 star, I had 1 book. For 2 stars, I had 5. For 3 stars, I had 15. Good number. For 4 stars, I had 16. So that's very even. And then for 5 stars, I had 11 books. And that is that. I'm a really big fan of the storygraph. I think I'm definitely going to continue using it this year. I love being able to look at the stats like this. It's really interesting, and it feels so fulfilling to be able to like look at them this way. Also, my neighbour's screaming, so I should probably wrap this up. I really hope I caught that. Anyways, that was my year in reading and all my stats and everything like that. I will add a little link to the storygraph in the description just in case you guys are interested in it. I feel like I don't even need to say this. I'm obviously not like, they don't know who I am. They don't know I'm making this. I'm just a big fan. I think it's really fun. So there you go. And that's pretty much everything. Here's hoping that 2021 is a really good year of reading, and we have more stats to look at next year. I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you did, drop down, tell me how many books you read this year. I'm really interested to kind of hear more about other people's reading years, because I've discovered mine is rather different from a lot of people I know. Most people I know aren't readers, so when I tell them I read 59 books, they're like, what? Whether you read 1 book or you read 100, please tell me below and tell me what your favourite book was of the year. I can't tell you what mine was because I have no idea. I read a lot. So I have no idea what my favourite books of the year were. This is not a video for that anyways. Okay, that's all. Bye. Thank you for watching. See you next time.